Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. We're going to head on out to Aqueduct this weekend for a race preview on Saturday. It's the ladies as we take a look at 4-year-olds and up. They're going to be traveling the mile and an eighth at Aqueduct, $150,000 up for grabs. David, just a small field in here, and inside, outside, probably the horses to take the most support. You've got Tizzy in the sky, who's sharp right now. To the outside, you've got Julia Shining, who was very precocious and then took a while to get back to the winner's circle, but was impressive in doing so recently. I think you even have last year's winner in here with Comparative. So not the biggest field in the world, but a couple interesting horses in here to look at.
Yeah, and Todd Pletcher seems to have this race covered pretty well. He's got the bookends in the starting gate, and he figures to have the bookends in the early running of this race, as Tizzy in the sky looks like the main speed, and Julia Shining, as she typically does, likes to close from the back of the pack. And I think Tizzy in the sky is the one who's going to attract the most support because she's just coming in with the fastest races. And as we take a look at the Timeform US pace projector, she just appears to have a pace advantage over this field.
You can look at her recent form too, and you can eliminate the Ogden Phipps when she was just in a little tough that day with randomized and idiomatic and pretty mischievous. She still showed speed that day before fading, and now she's going to make her second start back after the break. So you'd imagine she might even be sharper and more fit in this start than she was in her most recent one.
Yeah, I think the big question heading into the Gopher Wand was, well, not only could she be ready off the layoff, but could she handle the cut back to a mile? Because she had been a horse who's at her best going around the two turns, and now she gets back to her better distance. So she figures to be pretty tough to beat in this spot.
Yeah, let's talk about Tizzy in the sky as we meet the field inside to the outside. So she's now a grade 3 winner. And this was the most recent effort in the Gopher Wand here. She had a fine start. She was second. She was in within about 2 lengths, and she got off the rail to the two path in between horses up to take the lead at the top of the lane. And she did hold off a couple late challenges from Occult and Movie Moxie, and you'll see Movie Moxie in the running lines, some of the other rivals in here. So this was a good performance, and as you're pointing out, David, a minute ago, she passed another test showing that she could cut back. So that was her first start off of a layoff, and it was probably going shorter than where she's best. That's what's a little bit tough about trying to really beat her in this spot, that when you look at and you can kind of project her being better at this distance and being better with that race under her.
Yeah, she's been a horse that on occasion has gotten a little bit outrun in the early stages because she is a horse that likes to be forwardly placed, but she's more of that one pace type who likes to click off those 12-second eighths of a mile. And last time in the Gopher Wand, they went a pace that was quicker than what she's typically comfortable with, but she was able to stalk, got to the front end, as you saw in that replay, and held off some late chargers. So just speaks to the fact that she's in great form right now. She drew the inside. I think the assignment is pretty straightforward for Kendrick Carmouche, who knows her well. Just get her out to the front end and start to slow down that pace, click off those 12-second furlongs, and see how far she can take them. It seems like she'll be a pretty strong favorite to go all the way.
Absolutely loves Aqueduct. All 5 of the victories have been here. We move to the number 2 next up in this small field, Just Music. Another horse who likes Aqueduct. Couple victories right here. 3 for 16, though, overall, David. And when you look at the 3 wins, though, they've been more recently in the last 7 starts. So a horse who's been in better form and been improving. But even with that, still has the lowest buyer top in the field. And just kind of comparing class, feels like she's a little bit overmatched compared to the rest of the group.
Yeah, she's won 2 of her last 3, so I don't want to be too hard on her, but she is stepping up in class from that first level allowance optional claiming condition. The one positive thing I can really say about her is that she does want every bit of this mile and an eighth distance. It feels like it really brings out the strengths and her stamina. At this level, though, as you mentioned, she'd still have to run a faster number that she's been running in her prior 9 furlong races, so she's just going to have her work cut out for her.
Fantastic start to the meet though for the trainer. The connections there for Linda Rice. They'll step this one up into stakes company. The number 3, Evidencias, was a Group 2 winner in Brazil. A multiple stakes winner here in the U.S. Was third in last year's Ladies behind Comparative. She's just not all that quick early. But last time out, David, that was a bad start even for her. Normally, you'll see her towards the back of the pack, but she was not even really in contention with the field early on, almost 15 lengths out of it at one point. She closed pretty well to finish third that day. How do you think she fits with this group?
Yeah, she really is a plotter. She'll just take herself out of races early, as she did in the early stages last time. And she had a lot of ground to make up. And she was coming on at the end of that race, just couldn't really prove a threat to the top two that day. And I think you have to question the quality of that field at Laurel a little bit. The winner was a big price who was trying the dirt for the first time in the Brittany Russell barn. And the runner up is okay, but she hadn't really run speed figures that would make her competitive in this spot. And while Evidencias did win that turn back the alarm going this distance over the Aqueduct course two back, she was running down the likes of Movie Mox, who I think even on her best day doesn't really want to go the 9 furlongs and probably a cut below some of these. So she's going to need some pace to come back to her if she's going to have her best chance here.
Number 4, Comparative, is last year's winner of the ladies. That was probably a softer group than what we'll have to be dealing with in here. Evidencias was third that day. The runner-up, Saddle Up Jesse, did come back to win. We haven't seen the best form from Comparative, though, in the last 3 races. I think you might be able to make a couple excuses for some of them. Kind of ran like a horse who needed the race last time out, David, which got kind of loomed up to challenge at the top of the lane and then backed up. That was her first start since April. So now second start off the 8-month break. Can we get back to some of the form last year that was pretty good? She had a nice stretch of 3 races in a row, including a graded stakes win. Just hasn't been able to get back to that. Can we make excuses for her, or do you think she's kind of going the wrong way?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get the argument that she was coming off the layoff last time and the go for wand, and the pace was legitimate. And she tried to do some chasing after Tizzy in the sky and just couldn't really go with that one from the quarter pole home. And it's not like she totally fell apart. She stayed on okay. And as you mentioned, I mean, she's a horse that was successful in this race last year, so she can get the distance. But kind of the point that you mentioned there, I don't feel like she was beating a field of this quality when she won the ladies last year. And as I look back at that 3 race winning streak, including that allowance race and the Buccola, and you start to look at who was behind her and you pick those fields apart, just kind of wonder if those accomplishments were as impressive as they seemed at the time. And I wonder if she'd have to get back to an effort that's maybe even a little better than she's ever produced to beat the 2 favorites in here.
I think a key for her would be, can she get close early in this race and be involved? That's where we've seen her do some of her best. If she can maybe get aggressive with her and just kind of keep her interested in the race, maybe she can hang on. As we get to the number 5, Julia Shining. Remember this horse? She was so precocious, and she was such a buzz horse early on in her career. She was a debut winner back in 2022, won her second start against Stakes Company, and then she was towards the top of her age group at that point when she was a 2-year-old. And then she goes 0 for 7 over 2023, 2024, but she comes back with a big victory on December the 1st at Aqueduct. During that stretch when she didn't win, it wasn't like she was performing awful. She was multiple graded stakes place, David, throughout that time. And even last out after the stumble at the start, extremely impressive, hitting the front late in the stretch there. She likes Aqueduct. So it was kind of fun to see horses like this who sometimes they get precocious. You wonder if they're just a little ahead of everyone. She certainly has talent, and that was one of her better performances.
Yeah, she's the younger full sister to the highly accomplished Malafat, and started off her career just like that one, winning a couple of stakes as a 2-year-old. But as you said, hit a rough patch in her 3-year-old season, and then kind of didn't really get things going when she came back earlier this year as a 5-year, as a 4-year-old now, I should say, last year. But I did like this last race that we took a look at, the allowance affair coming back off the layoff. She was cutting back to a 1-turn race for the first time since her debut. And she's a horse who has been a little bit one pace, has gotten run off her feet in the early stages. And I like the fact that she was able to get into contention by the quarter pole and then really finish that race off through the stretch and just kind of won with Dylan Davis gearing her down through the final 16th of a mile. I like that Dylan's coming back to Ryder because he obviously shipped out of New York to be based at Gulfstream for the rest of the winter, but coming back in to keep this mount on Julia Shining. And I'm just hoping that what you mentioned plays out with the pace, that Comparative applies a little bit of pressure to Tizzy in the sky, because I think that's Comparative's only chance to win this race. And maybe that sets it up just enough for Julia Shining to come running, because she does have that mile and an eighth race at Aqueduct in the Comely that I think would even be tough for her stablemate Tizzy in the sky to beat, because she ran Raging Sea to a nose decision that day and was very competitive against a really strong field. So I think Julia Shining has it in her to make it close at the end.
And she's probably the horse that I'd be the most interested in kind of watching the rest of the year too. If she comes in with a big performance here, you feel like she could be a horse that could make some noise in legitimate graded stakes races down the line. So let's see how we wrap it up with selections here, David. We'll start off with you. You're going to lean towards Julia Shining.
Yeah, I obviously have doubts that she's going to get the pace that she really needs to be effective in here, but just kind of hoping those two speeds hook up a little bit. And I feel like she's got the potential to move forward off that impressive return last time. And as you mentioned, I think she is the horse with upside coming in here.
We have the same top three. I think if you're looking for some value in here, maybe you could get one of the better races from last year from Comparative, shake a little bit of the rust off in that prep race. And the key, as we both hit on, got to get aggressive with this horse. Use her early on, get her in the race. And if that happens, that could set up for either of the horses that we like. It's better for Comparative, and it could probably set up for Julia's Shining, who David has on top. So however you're playing them at Aqueduct this weekend, we wish you the best of luck.